Okay, so it's time for us to get back into our coverage over the X-Men. Now, guys, we had just covered the wedding for Scott Summers and Jean Grey, which honestly was a great issue, very special moment. But as we all know, when it comes to superheroes, they can't just have one nice moment and have quiet time after that nice moment. Usually, right after that special moment, something bad has to happen. And so as we get into Excalibur issue number 75, we're once again kind of left to believe that we're going to see the end of Rachel Summers. Kind of like saying, hey, she might leave the book. She might actually die or possibly go back to her timeline. And really, as we get into the opening pages for Excalibur issue number 75, we pick up with Rachel Summers, Nightcrawler, and Kitty Pryde coming back to Muir Island. Now remember, when it comes to Muir Island, it's the current base for Excalibur at the moment. But with that being said, our three heroes had just left the wedding for Jean Grey and Scott Summers. And really for Rachel, she's really excited because to her, she believes in the possibility that with her parents now being married in this timeline, then most likely she'll be born in this timeline. And really the last few story arcs for Rachel, she has been somewhat happy. And the reason why, because she was able to build a bond with Jean Grey, her mother, in this timeline. Now, just in case you're probably wondering, like, hey, Fresh, why in the world are you calling it this timeline? Because for Rachel Summers, she's not from the main Marvel universe. Matter of fact, she's from a different timeline, the Days of Future timeline, where basically it's a dark future. And for Rachel, she went back in time hoping to change her future into something more, well, special and better. The problem was, yes, she did change the timeline, but her future timeline had became an alternate timeline, leaving us wondering what is then the future timeline for the main Marvel universe. And that's why I say she's not from this timeline. But either way, she's still excited about the fact that there is a possibility that now she'll be born in this timeline. Now, with all that being said, when they do arrive back to Muir Island, we see Rachel go ahead and kiss Rory Campbell to kind of express how happy she is. Now remember, Rory Campbell was brought in by Charles Xavier to hopefully find a cure for the legacy virus. And really, he only been around for like a couple story arcs, but in those couple story arcs, him and Rachel were able to build a relationship. Not like, a full-blown one, but begin to show feelings towards one another. Now, this leads into the whole problem when it comes to Rachel Summers. And let me explain. So, when it comes to Rachel Summers, on the last few story arcs, every once in a while, one of her body parts will begin to change into a body part that belongs to Captain Britain. Now, remember, when it came to Excalibur, at first, it was not an X book at all. Like, for Chris Claremont, Alan Davis, their main goal was to keep Excalibur away from the other X titles. Occasionally, you will have Excalibur cross over with the other X teams, but most of the time, they were on their own. Now, once you had Chris leave and Alan leave the book, when it came to Marvel, it was all like, hey, listen, it's time for Excalibur to join the rest of the X teams. So when it came to Fatal Attractions, it was like, hey, this is now a new beginning for Excalibur. But before Fatal Attractions, when it came to Excalibur, they had lost team members left and right to the point where there was only 3 people left: Nightcrawler, Rachel Summers, and Kitty Pryde. When it came to Captain Britain, he was lost in time. And so every once in a while, you have Captain Britain trying to get back into the main Marvel universe, it seems, by using Rachel Summers as a way to get himself back into this reality. But it seems like if he does come back into this reality, then most likely they'll have to switch places, which means she'll leave this reality and who knows where she'll go to. Now, let's not forget, when it comes to Captain Britain, he had a girlfriend, and that would be Megan. Now, Megan was very attached to Captain Britain for a lot of good reasons, but once he had disappeared in time, she kind of felt in a state where she was no longer able to talk to other people or be able to move. And she's also a shapeshifter. So she began to change into this creature form where she's no longer that beautiful character that people love to see. But either way, for Megan, she realized that Rachel was hiding something. And she realized that Rachel knows how to bring Captain Britain back into this reality. And so it's Megan saying, hey, Rachel, I know you're happy and all because your parents got married. There's a possibility you might finally arrive in this reality, but I'm gonna need you to go ahead and bring Captain Britain back because that's the man I love and I want to see him now. Now, you do have Nightcrawler and Kitty Pryde run into the room because they hear a lot of commotion coming from the other room with Moira McTaggart, Rachel Summers, and also Megan. Now, while you have Nightcrawler there, the alarm goes off, and we kind of find out that Nightcrawler had invited somebody else who can most likely help figure out what in the world to do with Rachel Summers, but also Captain Britain as well. And that would be Amanda Selfton. And I really hope I pronounce her last name correctly. But when it comes to Amanda, she's been around for a good while in Marvel Comics. She first appeared back in X-Men issue number 98. Now, we had learned a long time ago that her mother had actually adopted Nightcrawler when he was just a young baby. Took him in and he was part of the family. Now, over time, the two characters, Amanda and Nightcrawler, they were able to build a relationship. Now, unfortunately, by this point in Marvel Comics, they're no longer together. But for Amanda, she does dabble in magic a lot. And so it's Nightcrawler saying, hey, listen, why not use her magical abilities to hopefully find a way to help out Rachel, but also help out Captain Britain? But for Rachel, it's a huge no. And the reason why, because for Rachel, she feels like everything is finally going great for her for once in her life in this reality. Her parents got married. There's a possibility that now she'll be born in this timeline. She was able to build a bond with Jean Grey. Everything is going great with her. And she's afraid that if she does try to help out Captain Britain, then most likely she's going to die. Now, let's not forget, for Rachel Summers, she had recently died, but thanks to the Phoenix, it was able to bring her back to life. And so for me, it's kind of like another good reason to be worried about possibly dying if you have to help out Captain Britain. Now, you have Rachel just storm off angry. Now, when she does storm off, she begins to hear a voice. Now, automatically, we're led to believe it's Captain Britain, Brian Braddock, but our Brian Braddock. But we can tell right off the bat, it's not our Captain Britain at all. And the reason why, because this Brian is more aggressive than our Brian. Basically telling Rachel like, hey, listen, I'm coming back. You don't have a choice here at all. I need to come back to that reality. Unfortunately, it might get rid of you, but like, I don't really care. I need to come back because that earth is not going to survive without me. And so we see Rachel once again going through a change where it seems like different body parts that belong to her are now changing into body parts that belong to Captain Britain. Now, she was able to turn her body completely back to normal. She's then confronted by Kitty Pryde. Now, when Kitty Pryde walks in the room, she tells Rachel that she saw everything. The whole idea of Rachel's different body parts changing into Captain Britain. And so it's Kitty saying, okay, what in the world is going on here? Now, you do have Rachel try to explain that she is the key to bring back Brian, but the problem is she hates the idea that if she does bring back Brian, then most likely she is going to die. Now, for Kitty Pryde, she realized what's going on with Rachel. And honestly, it's called survivor's guilt, where technically, if you are able to get out of a bad situation, but your partner, your friend, or whoever was not able to get out of that situation, you feel bad about the idea that you have survived, but the other person did not survive. And so for Kitty Pryde, she's saying, I get it. Like, you have gone through a lot. and now you are able to live a good life, but now you feel bad because Brian is unable to live a good life. You feel bad about the idea that you can have fun and he can't. Now, you have Kitty Pryde tell Rachel, like, listen, your survivor's guilt is not really tied into Brian Braddock being lost in time, that there is a different origin point for your survivor's guilt. And so you have Rachel allow Kitty into her mind. Now, with her doing that, you have Kitty realize, like, oh, your survivor's guilt came from your own timeline, the Days of Future timeline. And the reason why, because back in that timeline, when it came to Rachel Summers, she was a hound, a person used as a way to track down other mutants for her master. And so for Rachel, she hated the idea that she had to hunt down other mutants, people who were family, people who were friends, people who were just innocent people out there, but because they were mutants, they got hunted down, killed off, or locked away at some kind of camp. Now, for Kitty Pryde, she was able to find the exact origin point for Rachel's survivor's guilt. It was one night where you had Rachel and the hounds go out of their way to hunt down another mutant, and then they handed that mutant over to their master, Ahab. Now, when it came to Ahab, he left the door open to the hound's dungeon to kind of tempt them to try to escape. And so one night, when they got that mutant and hand that mutant over to Ahab, he began to torture her and she began to scream. But the door was open. And so for Rachel and the rest of the hounds, even though that door was open, they were scared to walk out of that door. But for Kitty Pryde, she says, this is your origin point right here, because you hated the idea that you were able to survive, but that young girl that you had hunted down did not get the chance to survive. Now, is Kitty Pryde saying you have to walk out that door in your mind they have left open for you, because it's the only way to get past this point. And so is Kitty Pryde helping her walk through her whole origin point for her survivor guilt. And once Kitty Pryde has done that, Rachel is now ready to at least attempt to bring Captain Britain back into this reality. Now, once you have Rachel being able to decide to, well, bring Brian back into this reality, they're going to use magic, going to use Amanda's magic. Now, you have Amanda say, like, right now, it seems like time is trying to fix itself, because you have Captain Britain who's lost in time, but you have Rachel Summers who's, well, not from this reality, this timeline. And so time is trying to fix itself by bringing Brian back into this reality, but most likely sending Rachel somewhere else. It could possibly kill off Rachel or possibly send her back to her timeline. Either way, they're trying to find the best way to not sacrifice Rachel, but to still bring back Captain Britain. Now, for Amanda, she also wants to use Megan as well, because Megan is Captain Britain's lover. She can be his anchor to bring him back into this reality, but again, to make sure to not sacrifice Rachel. Now, for our heroes, they all go into the time stream. Now, when they do, you do have our heroes being able to see the past, the future, the present, different timelines. But I kind of want to shift our focus onto Rory Campbell. And the reason why, because for Corey, he does see his future. And unfortunately, his future is that he becomes Ahab. As we all know, Ahab is the person who's usually the master for Rachel Summers in the Days of Futures Past. And matter of fact, he's the one that turned her into a hound. And so when it comes to Rachel, she had just made out with the person who down the road will become her master and be killing off mutants left and right. Now for Rory, he is very scared of what he could possibly become. And this will lead into a whole storyline for himself in other videos down the road that we're going to do. But let's go ahead and get into the ending of this book. So you do have Rachel find Captain Britain, Brian Braddock. Now, again, we can tell that this is not our Brian Braddock. And the reason why I'm saying that because the way he is speaking is really more aggressive towards Rachel Summers. But either way, you have Rachel realize what she has to do. She has to go ahead and sacrifice herself to allow Brian to come back into this reality. And the reason why, because again, she should not be here. She's from a different timeline and she needs to go back to that timeline to allow Captain Britain to come back into this timeline. And so you have Rachel say goodbye to everybody. It's kind of like, great. It's Excalibur losing another team member. Like, this freaking sucks. Yes, they're getting Captain Britain back, but they are losing Rachel Summers. And so she says goodbye, and we're kind of left to believe that with her sacrifice, Captain Britain is back. And he is back, but he's not thinking straight. Matter of fact, he's going by a different name. Now, guys, I'm going to most likely mispronounce this name, and I'm going to try my best in later videos down the road to work on my pronunciation for this name, but he's now going by the name Britannic. And right now, it seems like there's something completely wrong with him. And we're kind of left to wonder what in the world happened to him when he was lost in the time stream. But either way, this is where we're going to end today's comic book video. So please leave me a like down below and subscribe. But guys, see y'all next time. Later.